I'm Rob Calvert, a visual artist, work in 2 and 3 dimensions. Typically the 2-dimensional work is oil on canvas that's done both directly and indirectly, perhaps best described as abstract. The 3-dimensional work may be sculptural in form, but it's best described as assemblages and use existing pieces, detritus, you name it, artifacts of culture and history. So I've been here for about 16 years and have a background in art, architecture, and education. What inspires me to create? Well, there's a personal answer to that, and there's a sort of impersonal answer. Let me start off with the impersonal answer. And that is, I think to dig at that question seriously involves understanding, or at least being aware of what it is to be human. I think it's a natural part of our evolution to be creative. Certainly to search for and to try to transform things in our world. And creativity and maybe the inspiration that's part of that, in all likelihood, is part of our biology. In other words, I was born with certain natural proclivities or inclinations, and what I came to understand is art was certainly a big part of that. What inspires me or to create things, they can be very situational. Whether it's our travels, whether the people I meet, but this is a job for me. This is my work. And so, like most people who have a job and go to work, they don't depend upon creativity or inspiration per se. They have to put themselves, and I include myself in this category of just going to work and putting in the time. And we don't know when the creative urge or inspiration is going to come, but we know we're in that flow. So that's my personal and impersonal response to it. The reoccurring themes in my art, I suspect some friends of mine may look at me and say, there's no such thing. My work varies quite a bit. And superficially, there are things that may appear to be reoccurring or not. And internally, I think because I work with a language that most people would say is abstract, it's harder to see what the relationship of the ideas that are in a painting and how they might correspond to things in the natural world. I always have friends who say, look at something and say, well, I see something. That's an associative connection to something in a painting. But generally speaking, when I see something like that, it serves as an obstacle. So I intentionally will try to make that disappear so I don't have those either symbolic or signification connection to it. So the question of theme, they more have the themes are constant typically through the idea, and the method by which to explore the theme is something else altogether. I did this drawing 12 or so years ago, and I probably would never have done this theme, if you will, had I not lived in the woods and lived here. Because I used to live in the city in Washington, D.C., and that kind of urban environment would not have lent to this theme. And for me, that there's a visual connection to being in the woods, but more importantly, the theme or the idea in the piece, in my mind, my connection to it, is that it deals with the boundary between things and how those boundaries change. In other words, there's a both and quality to where something begins and what its neighbor is. And I prefer looking at boundaries and the definitions of things and where they are and they aren't, and where those qualities are shared or informed by their neighbor, and how the hierarchy of a piece will change. So that's a reoccurring theme in my work, and how I explore it will vary quite a bit. And this is a piece from just a few weeks ago, and it has both a superficial or appearance connection to this, but it's doing so by different means, because a drawing is not a painting, and there are opportunities to explore density and plane and whatnot that you don't get in a drawing, at least in one that relies so much on line and not so much on plane. But there's an interpenetration and a sharing of ideas. Those are the themes or constant things for me in drawing or painting. But I also work in assemblages. I've referred to them previously. And those themes are very situational. And what would be the constant there is if I'm attuned to something that's going on in the immediate world, whether it is a concern for the environment. For example, I've done themes regarding the Dust Bowl or environmental degradation. Oklahoma, for example, that's been a reoccurring theme. It's also the theme of affluence and popular culture and some of the excesses of living here on the East End. So I don't enter into those questions. I don't enter into those ideas lightly, and I'm usually moved in a way that I'm either angry or upset about something. And that's not a place that I want to enter into as a reoccurring idea. I know it's going to happen, but it's not something I'm looking to do. But the only way for me to get to some of those themes is to be attuned to what's going on and allow myself to enter into it. Whereas the paintings are more states of mind. They're more emotional spaces to enter into. They're more contemplative. They're more that aren't dependent upon the day-to-day changes that occur that might be thematically in one of the assemblages. So I mentioned the reoccurring themes and grabbed a couple of pieces to try to illustrate. These are not the same theme. They are illustrative of the themes that I mentioned. For example, the one on the far left there, there are these ubiquitous style magazines around here, lifestyle magazines, and this inundated with that, and that excess was, in my mind, just necessitated a response to it. So as a mixed media piece, as a piece of sculpture, in addition to how it's assembled, the idea of transforming that character, it seemed essential to making the comment on the lifestyles both here and how we present ourselves. A few years ago, I worked on a piece that entailed house shingles and house paint and metal foil. Well, I never would have even adopted that as a material to work with, but living here, being responsive, if you will, to local conditions is the basis that sets, is the willingness, or I didn't say that very well. The reoccurring theme is a willingness to take local topical issues and find an opportunity to explore what they mean for me. And even though I've not used house shingles and house paint and metal foil before, what's the constant or the reoccurring theme is the willingness to look or examine where I think we are as a local community or as a society at large to explore those things. This started in earnest years ago, I think, when I went to Poland and happened to go to a wedding and went to Auschwitz and had a difficult time with that experience. And knowing that I'd worked, that the language of assemblage was possible, it seemed to be the most tangible way by which to explore history and artifact, and to explore both personal history and what I think is a connection to universal history. It happens to have devices that my father would have used as a surgeon. It happens to use pigmented beeswax that my wife uses in her beekeeping. And some photography and the like. So the reoccurring theme there is to try to find a physical form through symbolic language for events that occur in my life. The evolution of my art. It may be best to ask me that question when I'm dead, or ask when I'm sufficiently old. Sometimes I find it hard anyway to understand exactly what's going on at any one moment. I need a bit more time to a distance from a piece or a series of works or a series of years to appreciate maybe or understand what's going on. But for quite some time, I've wanted to work as large as I could. A 6-foot canvas was a common dimension, and I've moved away from some of that, but the large canvases like this one allow me to work and create an environment that's immersive, that I'm feel completely enthralled or connected to, and enter into a conversation with the work itself. So this piece is very dense. It's from a while ago, and it took several years to work on, not continuously obviously, but it's what I would regard as primarily direct painting. It involves some indirect painting too, but it's dense in its paint. The shapes that are articulated are suggested. There's a softness between them. There's some ambiguity. It's not intended to be ambiguity as to be unclear, but there's a psychological and physical space that seems to exist that is not as distinct as to what the boundary is between one object and the next. And I think what we'll see in the next painting we show is a more distinct articulation of where something starts and stops. That doesn't mean there isn't a both-and quality that objects within the space possess, or in my mind need to have for it to work, but it doesn't rely on the same kind of dense, somewhat sublime quality of dark paints. So we have a mutual friend who said, who's shown my work in the past, who said, "Your work is so dark." And I think what she was telling me was, it's not just dark in terms of color, it's dark in terms of theme. And I think that's an accurate description. We don't always get to pick and choose where we are emotionally and what we are willing to express or where we're willing to go. And so part of the evolution is simply attributable to the changes in outlook or current events or life at home. I mean, that stuff becomes the substance of paintings. So there are periods in which we are both either in a dark place or are willing to explore themes that are dense, maybe troubling, involve a bit of in this case, I think this involves a bit of the sublime. And that's not always a place that I want to go, but it's a place I'm willing to go. And so some of the evolution of the work is natural, the ebb and flow of life, and other times it's because you want to be in a certain, where I want to be in a certain place, and I choose to work in a dense manner. So this is just one of those pieces. So the evolution of the work, evolution suggests a sequential, or often thought of as a sequential set of changes that one thing builds on top of the other. I'm not sure that happens all the time, both in terms of because these works don't have studies that precede them. These are more like automatic writing or exercises. So, but this one I do think, had you been here a week ago, I would not have shown you this, because it was unresolved in my mind, the bottom third of the piece, but it is illustrative of what I think some of the evolution is going on. The last painting we saw, the boundaries between things and what those things were less distinct. Not that they didn't exist, not that those relationships and the underlying structure of the painting couldn't be discerned, but they were less obvious. Here, both the color choices are much simpler, and the boundaries between things seem to be simpler, and yet how they combine with one another, or what obviously they are or they aren't, that's more distinct. But how they compose or recompose themselves hierarchically, they vary depending upon how you're willing to look at the piece. So I think this is a good example of direct and indirect painting in terms of how paint is layered. It does, there's always an evolution of the paints that you use. I'm using more dry pigments now, have a larger, wider range of colors that I can use. And there's a paint called, color called Earth. It's from Spain, and it combined with indigo yields a deep black that I just, I was not using that same black. I didn't use a lot of black in the past. I would create blacks, but I didn't use a lot of straight up blacks. But that combination here, for example, gives me a depth that which is more of a lamp black doesn't. And but those are just technical things that you learn that you don't necessarily anticipate when you construct a painting or make it. What you know or learn about how to mix paint or use it, layer it, those kinds of things. But I do think this suggests a direction in which there's a greater articulation of whatever the thing is without trying to describe it in terms that you can identify it with something with something in nature. So how do I feel about the evolution of the work? Well, I'm always hopeful that it's getting better. I can't always be predictive of where it's going to go because that's not the nature of how these things evolve. I can set up certain criteria for how I'm going to work, or whether it's the size or the material I'm going to use, but how it's going to evolve is something I have less control over. These are, I think of these paintings as a process, not a product, and they're evolutionary in and of themselves, and they're conversations. And if I'm going to have a conversation, it involves at least a two-way conversation, which means I need to do as much listening as I do speaking. And these things don't complete themselves. Rarely do I think they complete themselves, but they usually demand my attention. And so I evolve only to the degree in which I'm listening, and only to the degree in which I understand the materials that I've chosen in service of the effort. And that's all I can say. So about the future of the work. In the past I've worked, as mentioned earlier, I've worked on large canvases, and I've kind of abhorred working on a small canvas. I remember when Silas Martyr had the big show with all the 8x10 canvases, and I got those things and I said, I am not doing a damn painting on an 8x10 piece. And I took the canvas off and I turned them into assemblages, and the doors that opened and contained all sorts of things. But despite not wanting to work small, there are reasons to work small. To change scale, what works at one scale doesn't work at another. And being able to have one inform the other is important. And I've tried to go back, this is a smaller recent piece, to work at this scale and to see what are the opportunities and difficulties of translating the larger pieces into the smaller pieces. But there's something else that I think is going on in the evolution of work. Most paintings, if you want to break them down, one of the ways to look at them is to determine whether the painter was more interested in value, meaning its white, its grayness or white or black darkness, than its hue or its color. And in the past, I've been more interested in value because I don't use color naturally. I was willing to use color quite artificially. So I would select colors that may have had a certain value that would be atonal, but needed to be that value, and it was an intentionally, if you will, disruption or dissonance. More recently, I've tried to move the needle a bit more towards the balance between the need for value and the need for the hue to make sense. And although there are some different scales going on here that are not completely sympathetic, I think it's illustrative of what I'm trying to describe. So where is the future going? I'm not sure. I never know. I have a clear answer to a question like that, but this is a recent painting. It has some work to be done in one part, but we're talking about the future, right? So unlike what I've shown you previously, where the objects or the things in the world, whatever it is, are not so distinct or becoming slightly more distinct, in this piece they're in fact broken apart and they sit as objects in a field, and that's not something I so overtly go after. And the consequences of that is that the piece is slightly totemic, and it has an object quality not only of itself but as a canvas, and that relates to maybe more three-dimensional pieces of the assemblages. But it's intriguing to me. I hate to use that word. I'm not sure it's going to be an avenue I go down, but it presents itself in a definitive way that I have to wrestle with and understand more about the implications of what this is, where this might go. So how does the art relate to the natural environment of where we live? I guess where we live, maybe the more common answer relates to the light or the landscape, the natural beauty that where we are fortunate to live. That's not the basis of this work. It never has been. I mentioned earlier about a drawing that I did that I could not have imagined doing anywhere else had I not moved here and lived in the woods and trying to and internalize that. So there are absolutely connections to it. I swim long distances at Long Beach, and so if you've ever swum open water and you're face down and you do it and you hear the rhythm of your body and the movement of your body, those are natural rhythms that deeply, work their way through the organs of the body and the heart. So it's hard to know how those things come out, but every place we live as artists is grist for the mill, and sometimes we're consciously pick those things, and sometimes, more often not, I guess we probably don't. This piece here is a conscious picking of something. My wife is a beekeeper, and my connection to nature in many ways is indebted to her work. A few years ago, someone poured gasoline into all the hives in a yard and killed them all. And it became the subject of a series of paintings. But so the plight of the honeybee is something pretty significant, and it's her life's work. So there are always these boxes that run their course and need to be replaced. And they have this beautiful interiority and exteriority to them. The interior where the bee has worked, and there's this beautiful finish from propolis and the like. And then the exterior that's sun-baked and wind-driven. And there's an opacity to the material and a plainer quality to it that I guess is related to having been an architect. But this material is from this place. And these are man-made boxes that nature, both in weather and in creature, transformed, and I, rather than discard them, found another use for them. So it's of the place, and it's of my experience of the place, but not in the sense that we normally maybe think about qualitatively what goes on in a place. So what do I deem successful art? Or for me, when it's successful? Well, I mean, I left a profession that provided a degree of public acknowledgement of what success was, and some remuneration and either, if you will, social prestige or position. To pursue art full time, I did that almost 20 years ago. And you exchange that currency of going from being a professional to doing something that many in society think is decorative or an accessory, non-essential. So success by the definition of how society thinks is not a good way to judge whether something is successful. The success of a piece, in some ways, is predicated upon a willingness to be unsuccessful. To risk what you don't know, and whether it's going to be a failure or something that's very satisfying. It's satisfying. If it's satisfying, it means I've had a communication with it, that it possesses some inherent, I'd say, intelligence, ability to communicate, both to me and to I think or hope to the observer. Otherwise, I'm involved in a tautology of what's the point of doing this? So, if it's successful, it has a resonance. It has an existence. It is its own being, and it can communicate. And there are canvases and works that are partially successful all the time. And what may be the most beautiful piece or most exquisitely, however you define it, executed portion of a painting doesn't work unless the whole thing works. So there are many successes that get destroyed or sacrificed, sometimes for good reason and sometimes for wrong. But the overall success of something has to be deeply felt if it's moved you and if it's afforded you a conversation.